Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the bed of an F-150. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a busy episode, even with F1 on the summer break this week. So we have a little bit of a sprinkling of F1. We've got lots of League of Legends to talk about, some Magic the Gathering, as always. Justin, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you too, man. I'm doing pretty well. You threw me a curveball. I thought your wedding officiating was this past weekend. I had a whole different opening planned. I had to call the audible like Tom Brady. But, we are here and ready to roll. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Like I was saying to you before the episode, the preparation for the wedding and all has definitely been a little stressful, more just in terms of my mental and preparing to do some public speaking. But I am excited for it as well, so it's gonna be a good weekend. That actually does kind of lead me into my rose, thorn, and seed for this week as well, because my rose.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
My rose is that I'm pretty happy with the work that I've done on the speech for the ceremony and everything. I had like a solid speech, and then I just kind of felt like there was something that was like missing a little bit from it, or that I wasn't hitting like a couple things that I wanted to in it and couldn't figure out how to work them in. Colleen and I watched a video then last night of her cousin's fiance officiated one of her own friends' weddings, and so they had a whole wedding video, and there were a couple portions of her speech and all that like just jogged my memory enough to be like, oh, that's exactly what I need to do to shift a couple things around and fit what I wanted to into my speech. So yeah, I'm pretty much wrapped up with that, other than the practice of just getting everything down and being ready to nail it. But yeah, it's exciting. So that's my rose for this week.
That is quite exciting. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. My thorn this week is just the weather, really, how hot it's been outside. It has been rough and has kind of put a damper on a lot of outdoor activities. Just this past weekend, like, we were doing some stuff with my family for my mom's birthday, and we were over in Lancaster going to Shady Maple. Shout out Shady Maple. And so we saw all these yard sales that were out and about like during like our drive there, and so we were like stopping at some on the way home, and one, it was a little too late, so they were like all kind of closing up, but two, it was just brutal heat. The past couple days have been rough, just walking from one building to another at work to do some stuff. I feel like I'm just like drenched in sweat. So I'm hoping it cools off a little bit so I can spend a little more time outside comfortably. But I guess that's global warming for you.
Yeah, you hate just creating a puddle the second you walk out the door. Your shirt is just a wet blanket on you, and that's never any fun.
Yeah, so that's been my thorn. Also because I've been trying to get back into running a bit more. I had been running like at least one of the days of my weekend, and it's just too damn hot out when you're waking up and it's already like 85 degrees outside. It's just not great for it. But for my seed, I have decided that I'm gonna try out a different form of exercise a little bit. Something that I've kind of wanted to try out, or I've been intrigued by from videos that I've seen, and so I'm looking to try and use getting into calisthenics to kind of continue the track that I want to be on in terms of like exercising. I've been running a bit more. Haven't been lifting as much. So I think this is kind of a way that I can, with the motivation of doing something new, kind of push myself forward into to kind of my goal of getting back in shape a little bit. So it's interesting because it's a different kind of style of working out than what I'm used to, and my flexibility I think is going to also get better as I'm working on it because it is so focused on form and executing like proper motions for things, and also hopefully I'll get that benefit out of it as well as being in shape and building a little bit of muscle through that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the interesting thing about the bodyweight exercises is what I've found doing them is if you, like you were saying, where you focus on the form, you focus on the like proper motion of it, proper body mechanics, it ends up being about the process and not necessarily the results. I don't think that's the thing you want to do if you're, looking for some kind of tone or definition or looking for like a particular look to your body. But I do believe there's like discipline benefits to it. You start focus on the breathing elements as well. And the calisthenics can be pretty meditative and quite enjoyable. And I've found, yeah, definite increases just in general strength. I felt increases in like mobility and flexibility, also decreases in like general pains and discomfort. It's a good way to like, if you notice a particular pain coming on during certain motions, there's for sure a calisthenic exercise that you can do to help reverse that and then strengthen the other side. And after a little while, you notice, oh yeah, that like pain in my hip is gone because my hamstrings are a little stronger than they were. So yeah, I'm happy to hear that you're excited by those ideas and excited by those exercises because yeah, I've found a lot of use to them for sure.
Yeah, and I've seen a number of videos on like TikTok and all with people doing the exercises and some like really kind of extreme like competition level almost like calisthenics, and they I mean it seems like you can get to like having a crazy physique, but I mean my main goal is to just get into good general fitness, and my flexibility and range of motion and things like that have not been what I've wanted them to be for a while, but yoga has still kind of just been too, I know I've talked about it, but it's been a little intimidating, and just having the time to go to an actual class, I haven't made the time for it yet. So
Hmm.
I think this is a good way. I will say, so far I'm not to the body feeling better parts. I went decently hard on my first workout doing. I followed this guy's beginner like calisthenics exercise thing, and I don't think it was like first time ever exercise thing, more like, oh, here are some things that you can do, and I just like ran through it all, and so I'm feeling a little bit sore, but I think that will of course go away, and then I'll be able to kind of keep pushing forward with it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, pain is just weakness leaving the body, brother. So, deal with it.
Yeah, so I'll suck it up a little bit,
Hmm.
but that does cover my rose thorn and seed for this week. What's been going on for you? How's your week been?
Well, looking at my notes here, one final thought about calisthenics and stretching and yoga. Sarah and I recently got a shipment from the massage place, and our foam roller came in. It just hit the mailbox today. So, I was rolling out my calves, rolling out my quads, hitting all the areas. So that may be an interesting option for you in the hopes of increase in the length and pliability of those muscles there. But yeah, it's just it's a good fun thing. Just remember to breathe when you're doing it.
Will do. And I do have a foam roller. It always hurts when I use it, so
That
it,
means you're doing it right.
yeah. Do you have the one that's like a stick that you run on your muscles,
Mm-hmm.
or I have like an actual like foam roller that I like lay on, and man,
Oh,
that
that's
is,
sick too.
yeah, that is my body weight on it is a little bit much, I think, for my muscles, but it's good for them, so I keep at it. Helps
Yeah.
my hip flexors a lot.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
So
quite enjoyable. Stay fit, everybody. Stay flexible. What's that guy with the beard? Stay thirsty, my friends.
exactly. I think that's.
Is that trademark? Can I get like shot in the head for saying that?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're good.
fair enough. Moving on. Um, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just letting you go into your week and your rose thorn
Oh,
and seed.
sick, dude. Well, thank you. My bad for stopping the train here. Well, so my rose here for the week. Interesting one. I know you've heard me talk about it before. My so we're setting expectations early before it gets out of hand. Me and Sarah had the holiday conversation. I told her like what my plan for it is and like kind of what I want to do, and she was kind of over the moon with it. And so it's nice going into that, just like setting up expectations. We know what's going to happen, and overall, I'm feeling like more comfortable than I was last year and any time before. So very excited about that. Definite rose.
Well,
Go ahead.
how so? Like, are you talking about like gift buying for each other, or just your general like this is where like what my family's doing and kind of like figuring that all out, or both?
A little bit of both, and kind of giving it to her, saying, "Hey, these are all the things that I'm going to be okay with. I kind of need you to be steering the ship. It's not really my wheelhouse for that." I said I'll help in any way that I need to, but I basically like help me to help you kind of thing. Where previously I felt like kind of flounderish, where it's like, okay, if I don't want to do that, what am I supposed to do instead? What are we supposed to do instead? Like, is the healthy thing here? So we just kind of set all that stuff up, gift expectations, where I said, look, I think for this year we should do X, Y, and Z to set up this because we've had this conversation previously. So we just did a lot of that stuff. So we kind of know what the ticket on the holiday season is going to be, but it's something that we've like been looking forward to, something we've been planning for, and just all that kind of stuff. And it just feels good to just kind of put that in your back pocket and just say like, all right, cool, done, dusted. We don't even have to worry about it now. We can just move on, take care of other things.
Yeah, that's nice to not have to stress about that, because the holidays. Sorry, my camera keeps freezing and I can't tell if my voice is, but the holidays can be a little bit of a stressful time with figuring a lot of those pieces of the puzzle out and everything. Like you said, with knowing it's not your forte, I'm sure that's nice to be able to just have that, as you said, done and dusted.
Yeah, just a little bit of prep can go a long way. But yeah, that kind of brings me to my seed. Talking with Sarah has just improved like dramatically, being that we're both, taking steps to work on the things that we don't do so well for each other. It's fun to come back together on those days and days since where it's like, oh, we are just understanding each other better, and there's this like sense of like teamwork going on where it's like, hey, we both understand that we're doing these things, yada yada yada. So it just feels pretty good in that regard, and that is like wouldn't have the holiday conversation doesn't happen without the seed. of this
Yeah,
week. You know what I mean?
definitely.
So they kind of go hand in hand. So that's really fun. I love Sarah to death. And then my thorn here for this week, it's just a funny thing. Sarah's sister Candace was watching an episode of Curb when we got back over the weekend, and so we've been tuning in. It's really funny. The one of the early episodes in season one with Julia Louis Dreyfus, she has this line about a guy who didn't keep an appointment, and she just like yells at him. She's like, "When you make an appointment, keep it." And she like flusters out the door and slams the door. And he's like, "Well, that wasn't a good meeting." Anyway, that like we watched that episode directly like less than a couple hours after having this conversation about like clients and some like friends and family that like may not respect your time as much as you would like them to, or clients or whatever it is. We were just having that conversation, and then we see this episode of Curb, and again it just hits us like a brick, like, oh my god, these guys are just like touching on real life in such a just like a funny comedic way. So hitting that like little serendipitous moment was just really funny. But yeah, like she said, when you make an appointment, keep it. That's my
Definitely.
thorn.
Yeah, I unfortunately not. I don't do that. I don't make appointments and not keep them. My struggle is with not knowing if at that moment, since I'm kind of introverted still, whether I'm gonna have the energy for said activity.
Sure.
I will just avoid committing to things sometimes out of just not knowing if I'll be up for doing them and everything. Like Sunday, for example, like Colleen and I had done stuff on Saturday with family, and all Sunday I was kind of expecting to be like a low key day, and she woke me up, or well, I woke up and she's like, "Let's go to the beach," and I was very very hesitant about doing it because I was like, in my mind I had all these plans and things that were like set, of just like getting things done around the house and
Sure.
like all and I went ahead and stuck with her plan, and so it reminded me that sometimes I do need to commit to those things because it was a lot of fun. It was a nice day, but yeah, I think I'm the opposite of that. Canceling plans after making them is I just like don't make plans sometimes.
Yeah, and that's probably the better camp to be in. But yeah, we want to some interesting things happening in the motor sport realm world.
Yeah.
Place with the cars. Obviously, we got some roster swaps coming in. Aaron, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple of things before we start talking rosters a little bit
Oh,
that have happened. No, they're still big things. So Red Bull has fired up their first Red Bull powertrain engine. So I guess this is the first full engine that they've built for the 2026 regulations, and all starting to look forward and get those things in the works ahead of time. I think that's when the engine freeze ends. So,
gotcha.
so they have that first Red Bull powertrain engine starting up, which is just pretty cool because it's the first Red Bull powertrain engine ever. So that's a big thing this week. The other thing, F1 teams have agreed to increase the edges of the floor by 15 millimeters. The FIA had proposed 25 millimeters. Teams compromised at 15. So to continue the reduction of porpoising and things like that, they've made a little additional kind of regulation to make sure that teams aren't having those issues and keep drivers safe.
Yeah, and not only keep drivers safe, but there's the element of, because that's within the realm of something the regulations can control, you don't want a gap to develop between these teams just because you wanted to keep this rule in, and you said, "Oh no, I think this is the way to go." So it's nice to see them kind of coming to a compromise on that.
Yeah, I think I'm sure that there are teams that um, didn't necessarily want to, but I think overall
Sure.
it's just a better way to do it, and I'm glad that they found something that the teams will agree to that will kind of just be a good compromise in the middle for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, big time.
So those are two big things. One last more fun thing before we get into roster talk was that in the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 that's going to be coming out, there is an F1 circuit track that is going to be a map on the in the game, which is pretty cool. So it's like you've got like the pit lane and the paddock and all the. I guess that will be the little rooms and whatnot that you can duck in and out of. There will be a couple cars like sitting there in the pit lane as well. So that's gonna be pretty cool to see and everything. F1 is just infiltrating all aspects of the world.
That is quite cool. I'm curious if they're drawing inspiration from one track in particular. If this was just a timely moment for something like that. But yeah, like you said, it seems like everybody wants their piece of F1.
Yeah, I think it's Yas Marina is the circuit that it's based off of,
Oh, that's cool.
from what I was seeing. So pretty cool. Looking forward to that. I think it'll just be neat to kind of see how they do in terms of creating that and see how realistic it'll look. I'm sure it'll be funny. I've already seen a couple of images and the fake teams that they've like put liveries on the car and everything just look funny. It just looks very like how when you're in a dream, like you can see real things, but something about it's just kind of like off.
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be like a dream F1 car, where you're not like, oh, I really want this, but like, oh, I'm in a bizarre dream where these F1 cars have weird liveries on them.
Right. That makes me think of there's a I can't think of who can't think of the comedian, but this is not my bit where he talks about Canada being an alien's interpretation of America, but it being a little bit off, and they abduct you, drop you in Canada, and you're like, well, this seems like where I'm from, and then very slowly you start to realize that, oh no, something is horribly wrong here.
The people talk weird. They're just a little too nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's funny. But yeah, I think that's a good explanation of it. But I think it'll still be pretty cool, and it's cool to see some other things that I enjoy kind of colliding with F1 a little bit. But enough of the fluff. We've got Danny Ricks talk. It's the Danny
More of the
Ricks
buff.
hour. So since we last were talking about this, so McLaren.
Previously on.
So McLaren has officially told Danny Ricks that they're planning to replace him with Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri's McLaren contract has been validated by the FIA, so that does definitely seem to be in the works. So at this point, it all just depends on, well, I guess like what happens this coming year for Daniel. It just depends on buyouts and things like that at this point. He has reached out to Alpine for that seat that's available because Oscar Piastri is not taking it. And so he seems to be one of the front runners for that seat. But Alpine has said that they've had 14 different drivers reach out to them in regards
Wow.
to the open seat,
Sure.
because with the McLaren seat being filled and all, it's kind of the highest available spot, or I guess a
Hmm.
spot that people think would be kind of a step up and everything. It does seem like Alpine would be okay taking Danny back. Bless you. After bless you
Excuse
again.
me. Sorry. Thank you.
To bring Danny Ricks back after having left the team to go to McLaren a couple of years ago when it was Renault. So it seems like that definitely could end up happening, but there's still some pieces of the puzzle that need to kind of fall together.
Yeah, in regards to going back to the team that he left, I think it'd be a little disingenuous to like say that there might be friction there. Like, will that be, will he be respected and this and that? Because Cyril left, correct? And it's Otmar Safnauer, correct?
Yep.
Right. So it would be like it's like a new it's the same team by name only. There's like a new organization and blah blah blah. So it may not be the worst thing. And interestingly enough, it it is the car that he would be fighting in McLaren, and it looks like the Alpine might have a little bit better of a trajectory just from, I've got a tiny little bird brain. I don't really know, but that's just what it seems. So it may not be a bad fit, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And it was the Renault car was a car that Danny had some good success in. He kind of helped to bring that team back from struggling at the back of the midfield to kind of competing towards the top of the midfield a little bit after his 2 years there. And this year, McLaren definitely had a little bit of a backslide, while Alpine has kind of continued that progress forward. I mean, people have been talking about it all season about how the Alpine is a rocket ship in the straight line. They've got a lot of things figured out, it seems, with the new regulations. So it could be a really good option. And so the question that I kind of want to, the question that I kind of want to pose is, obviously Daniel Ricciardo is a beloved member of the F1 paddock, of F1 in general. He's been around for quite some time now, probably something like 11, 12 years in F1 now.
Mm-hmm.
Should that carry weight, I think, is my question. There's obviously the fact that he has had a lot of success in F1. As I had sent you that tweet that I saw, that in the past 10 years, only 5 drivers have scored more wins than Daniel Ricciardo. And it's Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen, Rosberg, and Bottas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that puts his name up there with, what is all of those other people are world champions. Oh no,
Right.
not Bottas, but still, like Vettel, Hamilton, Verstappen, Rosberg, all world champions. So that's pretty high acclaim, but at the same time, like, where does that balance out with current performance and everything? Because you know that there's the potential for these really high highs, and really being successful. But if he's the only winning driver in a McLaren in the past probably 8 years or something like that too. I forget how long it's been, but there's has not been a McLaren driver that's won a race in quite some time, except for the McLaren 1-2 last season. So
Hmm. So then, well, maybe the drive where his veteran status mattered was this contract with McLaren. The one phrase that I kept hearing being thrown around was the product wasn't what was promised. And so maybe the name the weight of the name allowed some blinders to be kept on from the McLaren onboarding crew, where he clearly has not gotten as much out of the car as Lando, and nor have we heard anything in the way of, different setup, working a different plan, whatever. It's just some frustrated driving, not frustrated driving, frustrated drivers about a car that isn't up to their, up to their whatevers. And then also Daniel not getting as much out of it as Lando. So it feels like even with a decent car, even being a driver that's won a whole decent bit, it hasn't shown up on the track that often in the last couple of years. And I remember Will Buxton talking about in commenting on thinking about racers, he said you're only as good as your last result, because it is so, hammer on forward and and progress and making sure you're getting your highest results. There's a sense in which, like, he hasn't done anything memorable this season. What's to say that he gets to do it in an Alpine? Maybe there's a maybe there's a sense in which the name recognition was worth more for the McLaren signing, and they likely would just rather have a young driver that they can mold around Ocon, who is getting a lot out of the car.
Yeah, he's definitely doing well. It's just an interesting question because it's like there's so many components to it. There's obviously the hope that well, I guess to some extent it's a known quantity. You know where Danny's at right now. You know where he's been and all. And taking a season to just bring in an untested like F2 driver or something like that, even like Piastri, it would be kind of a bit of a question mark. Like you don't know what you're getting. It could go really, really poorly. It could go great, but the fact that you know like what Danny Ricks is, that's I think a pretty big thing. I think the other big component is he is one of the most liked drivers that's on the grid. He gets
Right.
I saw a tracking of top social media interactions across the drivers after race days. Danny Ricks is far and away above everyone, like
Gotcha.
millions and millions of impressions more than any other driver after races and everything. And so like
Gotcha.
that's a huge thing. The marketing potential. People love
Right.
him. Like it doesn't matter if you're a fan of any specific team. Like I don't think there's really anyone who dislikes Danny, and that is great for branding. It's great for sponsorships. So like I don't know if there's an exact answer, but it's kind of getting to the point based on his drives recently. And like you said, your most recent result should be the most important at least. But where
Well, I don't know if it should be.
or
That's
well,
just the impression that I have.
I guess I just want to, I'm curious where the line is that it's like, okay, the value add of him as a person is no longer worth the drive.
Right.
So, because I think that based on where he's at right now in terms of his driving and everything, his confidence, and just race day things, qualifying, all of that, um, that's I think a good question to pose because I think he's close to that line right now of where the things he brings to the team, sponsorship, name recognition, veteran status, and things like that just don't matter if he's not putting out good enough performances.
Right. Like being worried about a massive contract or paying a massive contract and then being worried if like he's still gonna go out in Q1. Like that's I don't think that's where you want to be as a growing Alpine as Otmar trying to, make an impression as an up and coming team principal for that organization. I know like he's done work before, but for that organization. Yeah, I don't know if that's the call that you make. I'd rather cuz you have to rip that band-aid off eventually.
Yeah.
And it seems like now's a good time to just say, all right, let's just get somebody young in that we can, do the faker thing or the Bjergsen thing.
Yeah, and just kind of try it out. And I mean, looking at just his head-to-head performances, like you were saying with Lando, Lando's beaten him in 9 out of the 13 races. 11 qualifying has outqualified him 11 times to 2.
Oh, that's bad.
Lando has 76 points. Danny has 19.
Oh, that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah, it's just the side by sides. Both have one DNF. Lando has a podium and Daniel doesn't. Danny's top finish this season is 6th, where Lando was able to finish P3 and get on the podium. So it's just in the head to head. Like Danny obviously is not getting what they need out of the car, so it makes sense to replace him. I'm just curious if Alpine decides to go that route. Kind of, I guess I'm intrigued to see if it's worth it.
Right.
Like, is it like, will that be kind of his last drive, or maybe it could be the resurgence of Daniel Ricciardo a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that I expect him to be competing for a world championship like he has hoped for in his career, but what Alonso and Ocon have been able to do with that car, I think it's overall a better car than the McLaren right now, at least this season. So it could be interesting to see. And I think that would be kind of his last straw if he's not able to perform. But I do love seeing him around in F1, so I wouldn't complain if he gets that drive.
Good for the paddock, that's for sure. Here's my official tall and short prediction. Daniel Ricciardo does go to Alpine, signs for a 1-year contract.
Seems reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
hot take, obviously.
Super hot. Hotter than the water that Oscar Piastri is in, because Alpine has taken him to court. So they're preparing to go to court over Piastri leaving. Their goal, from what I was reading, is that they would like to have the money refunded to them for what they've invested in his career. So they understand that he's left and all, but I think he from what I understand, he came up through the kind of Renault pipeline. They bring him in to be reserve driver after being successful in F2 in their driver program and everything. He's the reserve driver for, I think, a year, and then just jumps ship. And so, I mean, in my opinion, hey, good for him for finding a drive and like going after it. I don't think anyone expected Alonso to leave, so it sounds like he probably was looking for opportunities, just expecting to not have an option at Alpine to drive this next year and not wanting to waste time. But yeah, it's definitely just interesting seeing them take him to court in regards to that money, and who knows what that'll end up kind of creating, but it could be odd.
Yeah, and we may not even like hear the full proceedings of it. I imagine some things like that can just get handled, just in the paddock with a handshake and a check written kind of thing.
Yeah, they'll
Um,
probably come to some sort of settlement in over it, but
sure. What kind of worries me in those scenarios is it the driver? Was it the teams? What happened? And I'm worried that because these are young guys ultimately, and depending on what their parents are about, I don't know about the Piastri family, but just thinking about young drivers, what I know about young League of Legends players, what you know about young hip hop artists, what you know about XYZ, you just hope that the management's behind them and isn't like fucking like I basically what I'm saying is I hope it's Oscar Piastri's fault and not people on his team like not helping him out in the
yeah,
proper ways to leave him like you don't want this to just end his motorsport scenario,
definitely. And I don't think it will,
Right.
but I do have a feeling that it really is something to the effect of what I just said, because from across the grid and everything that I've seen online, no one knew that Alonso was going to jump to the Aston Martin drive. People didn't even know long before that happened that Seb was retiring. Like that was
Right.
just a very bang 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 kind of thing. And so obviously like we were talking about before, I think Alpine was like, "Oh, like we're oh shit, we don't have a driver now." Like oh let's put this guy in. He's like our best option that, and like they obviously as a reserve driver trust him to be in their machinery. But I just have a feeling he had probably already started contract negotiations elsewhere because no one
Sure.
expected Alonso to be going anywhere.
Right.
So I think that that's hopefully what happened and not some bad advice from friends or family or management.
Mhm.
But yeah, it kind of, I think unfortunately will leave this like dark cloud over his head a little bit into next season. So
Mhm.
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Hopefully he can take it all in stride, and I think if he can well, then that will hopefully make him a pretty well-rounded driver and everything, because that's a lot of pressure to be put under immediately in your career. A lot of drivers get the opportunity to start on a back of the grid team or a sister team or something like that,
Mhm.
where the expectations are low and it's about learning and growing and testing your potential. And so now he's going to be thrust into the spotlight a bit. So best of luck to him. I'm looking forward to that. We've got lots of F1 before he gets his drive though. So
Yeah, what do we got? 9 to go. 13 down.
yeah, I guess 9 to go since Russia was taken off the list, and I don't believe it was replaced. Um,
Right. Those
so
wily hooligans.
and so leading into upcoming F1, even though we're still a couple weeks away,
Yep.
Mattia Binotto says that Ferrari is not going to change their approach going into the second half of the season. He doesn't think that Ferrari has done anything wrong or made mistakes, apparently. So, um, I that's just kind of mind-boggling. I think that whether it's their reliability issues, just outside of their reliability issues, we've just seen so many mistakes in terms of race strategy. And I'm like,
Right.
there's got to be something that you can improve on. You can't look at Ferrari's first half of the season and just go, no, we're doing everything right, just bad luck. Like it's not. It's some maybe not all of it.
Some bad luck. I have to think that some of those press releases they don't believe that stuff that they say, or they're oversimplifying to the degree that it comes across as like, well, that doesn't make sense, or they're actually answering a different question in
Yeah.
some regard where they're like, oh, are you going to change the blah, blah, blah? And what Matteo's thinking is like, oh, no, well, we're going to continue along the same process.
Mm.
Yeah, things have gone awry, blah, 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 blah. Like, he could be
Addressing.
just
Yeah.
just something else,
Mm.
I have to believe that those guys are so calculated in what they're saying that I don't know.
No, I definitely get what you mean. Of course, we'll wait and see, but it could be just a bluff, or I don't know if he really does believe that, and it's talking about what it seemed like from what I was reading. Doesn't give me a lot of hope for Ferrari to have a good second half of the season, and
Right.
I think we'll have a nice fight for second and third between them and Mercedes. So not not too much else going on in the F1 world, but still a little bit of the off season, little bits and pieces that we'll get here, or I guess mid season bits and pieces that we'll get here and there. But do you have anything else that you want to touch on as we move into League of Legends?
Nope. We'll just keep everyone updated as we get rosters solidified. But other than that, we've still got a couple weeks till Spa. So yeah, that's all I've got. Let's start with some LCS games.
Yep. And Hooney also announced his retirement this week. So Hooney is stepping away from League of Legends completely. We saw him step out of the lineup for TSM a few weeks back because of some ongoing wrist issues and everything. And so I guess he's at the point in his career where he's had a lot of success. He's had a great career and everything. And just for health and all, gets to step away, walk off into the sunset. I know I've been critical of him, but like looking at his career in general, he's had a really spectacular career. So
Yeah, world champion with T1, correct?
yep,
Yep. So yeah, that's an accolade that you get the green jacket and you're in the club forever.
yeah, not too many people have it. I think was it the perfect split with Fnatic, the almost perfect split with Immortals,
Mm-hmm.
um, and all the last couple of years. I've definitely been critical of him, but congratulations to Hooney on a great career, and I hope he enjoys retirement and finds something fun to enjoy after his League of Legends life.
Well, I hope his wrists are doing okay. I hope just him and his family are in good health in general. You don't want to hear someone retiring from an injury because of the thing that they were doing for work. So yeah, we just wish good health to him and his family. He was a wonderful player to watch, very fun, like we said, world champion. Um,
Yeah.
really good egg.
Definitely. Will be missed. A very funny guy as well, but that was the only note I had before we talk about our LCS matches for the week. We had Cloud9 versus CLG, and then we had Team Liquid versus Evil Geniuses. I guess if you want to go ahead and get us started in the C9 CLG matchup, I'll pull my notes up on my phone because that's what I have to do at this point in my life.
I think an interesting place to start is the CLG draft. We see the Karma, Seraphine, and Jace, which just has an insane amount of poke, an insane amount of disengage and counter engage. So just from the pick and ban, interesting draft. You get standard Lucian Nami on the other side. You get Fudge on the top lane on his Fiora, and then Blabber on the Trundle. So interesting draft overall. The the Wukong Trundle quite standard at this point, but I think the main core of the poke comp from CLG was really kind of what stood out in this game, kind of at the start.
Yeah, and I had some notes as well. The Jace, and kind of using that as the last pick, flex pick, to be able to decide if you're sending the Yone top versus the Fiora, or kind of giving Dokla the upper hand in the matchup with Jace and the range into the Fiora. I think that
Hmm.
was a really nice shift that they made, and also going with the triple AD on the top side, to kind of go with the Seraphine and the Karma in the bot lane. The amount of just range advantage that you have in that bot lane, I think CLG won the draft pretty handily, in my opinion. I think that
Yeah.
the scaling that you have on C9 is pretty strong if you can get to that point. But I just, looking at the draft initially, it's really tough to get there, because, like you said, a lot of disengage, a lot of poke from CLG's side. You don't have the ability to really go in as much and get too far ahead. Um, Especially with the way the game starts, with the late invade from Cloud9, Blabber getting killed at the opposing red buff, and just kind of immediately tipping things in CLG's favor from the start. They kind of thought that they had a little cheeky late invade, and ran into a 3v2 pretty quickly. So definitely a bad way to get the ball rolling when you need to get ahead.
Yeah, it didn't start out really well, and then we see the fumble in the top side where Poom rotated all the way top to kind of meet the opposing jungle timer, mess that whole thing up. So yeah, I think right from the beginning, there's a just sense of Cloud9 being on the back foot in comps that we already had a sense of CLG getting the better draft, and then from there, there's the first Rift Herald fight that Cloud9 came in so scattered,
Yeah,
so like not
CLG
calling the
rotated.
right.
They rotated so quickly too, and just had the numbers like immediately, and that was,
Right.
yeah, that was a huge um, moment, I think, in the early game.
Yeah, and we see contracts take a big like tempo advantage there. We see him take a big experience advantage there, and just starts to get rolling. And I think that's the fight that began tipping it in the favor of CLG, where they were able to control the game state pretty well from there. We have the four dragons from them, where they go to just lock it up from every angle.
Yeah, and C9 did fight back a little bit. They did go bot, and look to try and pick up some kills. I think they killed Poom in the bot lane with a quick burst out from the Lucian Nami, but then just hanging around too low too long, and contracts again showing up. He played really well in this matchup. Later on in the game, getting a pick on, I believe it was Blabber around the red buff, where they were able to pick him off and start moving over to Baron,
Hmm.
and just kind of continue that snowball. I think, unfortunately, Cloud9, like I said, they needed their comp to get ahead a little bit and be able to put pressure on in the early game, and just were immediately set on the back foot from some solid play from CLG.
Hmm.
So I was impressed with CLG's performance. Their draft, like I said, was really solid. So I definitely, as a C9 fan, I think that there's some good things to work on. I think they overextend a bit too much when they're behind. I felt like there were a couple moments Fudge got picked off as well, overextending later in the game. kind of going past that general vision range that C9 had. So I think that is a big thing to work on, is not overstepping when you're trying to get back in the game, or when you're in the lead. We saw a couple of the games in the LPL and LCK where I felt like there were some steps over extending when teams were in the lead, and
Right.
it kind of set them back a little bit as well. So just kind of tempering their aggression. I think C9 has some struggles doing that. So props to CLG for kind of continuing to push their advantage throughout that matchup.
And using a really interesting draft to do it. The one thing I want to comment on is the head-to-head between Jensen and Palafox, the Azir versus Yone matchup. And Jensen really was kind of breaking Palafox's ankles. There were a lot of dodges on the ult, the Q setups, or whatever the ability is, and really denied a lot of damage. Probably denied a kill or two, even just by
Definitely.
sidestepping some of the abilities. So great work from Jensen. I think he played very well in that head-to-head matchup. Obviously, it wasn't going to be enough to win the whole game. Just wanted to comment on like the caster kind of assassin matchup where we see Jensen playing it out very well, both in the lane, mid, and late game, understanding the play patterns and timings of the Yone and just sidestepping when important, just doing it clean as ever. So yeah, GG's to CLG against Cloud9 here in going into the second to last, the penultimate week. Not the last, but the second to last. So yeah, GG's to CLG in that matchup. Let's move on to the Evil Geniuses versus Team Liquid.
Again, another interesting draft. I think the set is something that we have not really seen very much in a while. We occasionally saw it in the bot lane as a support, but really have not seen it too frequently. And then Team Liquid picking up on the Sivir and kind of the prioritization that has changed in looking for that, with the Callista, Ezreal, and Zeri being banned out.
Yeah, the rise in Sivir priority is quite interesting. Obviously, it's a great team fighting ultimate. Scales insanely well once you start getting those ricochets out. The amount of area of effect team fight damage is just nuts. So yeah, it's an interesting pick. Obviously, the change of the patch has brought a bunch of these champion changes on. So yeah, Sivir rising to priority 2, 1, and 8 from Han Sama on that one. Like you mentioned, the set from Team Liquid, and it was described as the Gwen counter pick that Bwipo was quite confident in, and yeah, it really played out that way during the match.
Yeah, the top lane was definitely Team Liquid's kind of key to cracking the door open. What I do find interesting is that their team comp is definitely a strong scaling team comp. So I think I expected them to take a little longer in this game, but they really were able to take that top lane pressure, just with Bwipo on the set. He's able to get a couple kills. They focus top lane, have the Trundle in the set kind of put him behind, and then once you get to that point, the set was just big enough that you couldn't blow him up, and so they're just wasting so much on him in every single team fight, and his haymaker is just giving him ridiculous shielding, allowing him to outlast any sort of burst that the Wukong, the Gwen are able to give. His microing in and out of the fight as well in a number of those was really impressive to watch. He was able to kind of stay out of range just enough to still be impactful, but without going down. So I whether or not it's a Gwen counter pick, I thought it was really well played, and the focus to ensure that it got ahead and was able to have a huge impact, I think really opened the door for Team Liquid in the matchup.
Yeah, he had a bunch of really key shielding moments that just brought about, well, because you get the shielding plus the gore drinker, massive boost of health that he was just going from 1% to like 60% health in some of these fights. And honestly, I have like 3 notes. I was super excited. I'm writing about the Team Liquid focus in the top lane. And my last note is just, what is this set? Holy shielding. Like, at a certain point, it was just the Bwipo show.
Yeah.
Everybody else was just cleaning up kills around him. They got the advantages they needed to. They just pushed down all the turrets, picked up a Baron, and like it was, yeah, the score was 20-6. Santorin's 7-1, Bjergsen's 5-1. Like, unfortunately, it was just kind of a stomp after a really, really well orchestrated dive in the top lane.
Yeah, and I was really again impressed from TL's side. They are matching up against the top team in the LCS, or I guess what was the top team in LCS, now tied for top.
Yep.
But they really were able to kind of control the game throughout. Didn't give any opportunities for EG to get back into it late in the game. As you mentioned, the set was just ridiculous. He's jumping into the middle of the EG comp and really just completely zoning off 4 people while they're able to kill the Gwen, and then just kind of push down mid to end the game at that point. But it was a really nicely controlled win from Team Liquid as a whole.
Yeah, especially like you said, going up against the top team in the league, really putting up a good performance, and just from a pick and ban standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, from a plan standpoint, like macro micro, I guess you could say, just really well played from Team Liquid. 24-minute stop.
Yeah, and I guess that locks in the playoff. Well, most of the playoff teams for the LCS, except for tiebreakers for position and whatnot. FlyQuest is in 6th. They're the only team that could potentially end up falling out of the playoff positions at this point. If they go 0-2, TSM goes 2-0, because they currently are one. Let's see here. I think, yeah, if I'm reading this correctly, TSM is 1-0 against them currently. So that actually might be the tiebreaker. If FlyQuest loses both matchups this coming week, TSM would have a 2-0 head-to-head against them. So,
Oh wow, okay.
well, and
But
TSM would
than
have
that,
to win both.
right?
So yeah, that's the only real shift that can have in terms of who is in the playoffs. Now it's all for seeding. We have a tie at the top with 100 Thieves and EG at 12-3. CLG and Team Liquid at 10-5, tied for 3rd, and then Cloud9 in 5th at 8-7. FlyQuest at 7-8 in 6th.
Nice. That should make for some pretty interesting playoffs here.
Definitely, and an interesting last week. We could have some good tiebreaker games and whatnot. So looking forward to this last week of LCS before we start into playoffs.
Yeah, we have a super week here coming up. So yeah, we'll have, I guess we'll do 3 games for North America, hit each day of the super week, or just get good coverage of the super week for you. But yeah, let's move on. Hit some LCK. Obviously, no matter where we go across the world this week, we've just got domination.
Yeah, And so the matchup that we had picked was the DRX versus Kwangdong Freaks. That was one of the closer head-to-heads that we had in the LCK this week. DRX is in sixth. They were 8-7 at the time, where Kwangdong Freaks was 6-9, so only two games back. But yeah, as you said, it was not the closest of matchups this past week.
And it really is this mix up of the bottom lane. We're getting more of the enchantresses. We see the Shirelia's Reverie come back as the rushed item alongside the Sivir. Just gives you a massive movement speed buff. Great for like the like mid-game neutral objective fights. Movement speed just helps you get on top of the enemy champions. You can bring that from your AD carry role, and then the rest of your comp can be just really solid skirmishers. From the DRX side, we see the Xin Zhao and the Gragas that have so much disruption, take so much space in a fight, that giving them that extra movement speed is going to be pretty big. So again, we see the results of the new patch coming through with the big prio shift to the Sivir. We see Deft and Barrel on DRX side on that little duo there. Interestingly enough, and this may be one of the first times I'm seeing it, Ghost meta on AD carries.
Yeah, well, and I think just the protection that they kind of had in the peel for the Sivir allowed for that that ghost, and I think it also just suits Zeri and Sivir very well. With being able to chase people down, having that extra chase down potential is big. But yeah, I think it did definitely work better on the Sivir. They really drafted around that, having a lot of protection with the Sivir Lulu, the Gragas as well, for a lot of disruption, disengage, and tankiness and everything there. From the get-go in Game 1, it was just... Well, I would say from the get-go, but it was a slow start. It really took a little while until even the first kill came across, I think, around 9 minutes. There was... and after that, it was just very much a farming kind of matchup, a little farming simulator in the LCK, to get them to the point where, I mean, I don't think you want to go into a farming simulator against a Sivir. I thought that was a little odd, but they were just able to kind of get her going in the team fights. DRX did have a couple of slip-ups, though, throughout the game with just, as I was saying, kind of overextending at different points in time and kind of allowing Kwangdong to try and creep back into the game.
Yeah, and that's been like one of the issues that we've seen with DRX coming into this split is we see some like mid-game transition issues with them where they can develop really good early game leads but often struggle to convert that to a game victory because they kind of flounder in the mid game. We see their vision fall off a little bit around whatever neutral they're looking for next. Towards the mid to late game, we see the vision fall off, not get as much control. So they're, getting picked off in rotations or going to side lanes. So it kind of slows down their progression. Thankfully, we didn't see those consistency issues come through this time. Excuse me. And DRX was able to finally pull through.
Yeah, and seeing Game 2, we see them basically run back essentially the same team comp that they had before. Only difference is the Xin Zhao gets banned out in the second round of bans, so they ended up with the Trundle in the jungle instead.
Mm-hmm.
But the first 5 bans in the LCK remain the same in both games. It's you're banning out the Gwen, the Poppy, the Callista, the Silas, Yumi, and Wukong, which I think are all really really good and appropriate bans right now. I think Wukong is really strong because he snowballs so hard and has so much disruption, as we saw kind of with contracts in the C9 CLG game.
Yep.
And so these other champions I think are just all good counter picks, pretty strong right now. But the Wukong and just all those bands staying the same, I always find interesting when we see that kind of come across with. But that's just the usual LCK thing. Is like these are the OPs, we're banning them all out.
Yeah, and that's like those are the blue side bands and the red side bands specifically because it is like Xing out certain strategies or at least hoping to like minimize the effectiveness of something. And it's like a handshake kind of thing, like some of the casters are saying, where it's like, all right, we agree to not we're not doing these. And like you said, just very interesting. I really enjoy the from the Kwangdong Freak side. I really enjoy the Ornn. I think it gives you some really solid late game assurance where you can start building those ornaments, start like maximizing your power for your champions. The Rakan didn't seem to work too well. We see the pivot from the Freaks into the Renata for game two. Obviously, thinking the Ornn wasn't good enough from Kwangdong Freak, so they pivot out of that from the top lane, pivot out of the Lee Sin as well, and go for the Vi, which, again, was decent, but overall, I think struggled once they fall behind.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there has to be something different that would have been better suited for the matchup. I mean, we're seeing throughout the game the Talia trying to get separation and kind of isolate players with the ultimate and everything, and with the other CC that you have the Sejuani, you have the Renata. With the hostile takeover. So you have these abilities that are able to kind of focus out and hit people from range, but then you're having a Vi where you're just diving straight into the middle of everyone, as opposed to something that maybe could have done a little bit more from distance, or maybe just had a little bit more crowd control that you can hit multiple champions with in
Mm-hmm.
some sort. I'm not having anything immediately come to mind for a specific pick, but I just think
Agree.
that there are other picks that would have been better than, oh hey, we can stun these people from the outside and make them attack each other and have Zeri and Talia kind of hit from range and then have a Vi just dive into the middle of their team.
And we see it work pretty well during the play in the bottom lane. They pull the Talia down with a really nice Weaver's Wall and just really set up on the bottom lane and jungler of DRX. We see the hostile takeover keep them on, the dangerous side of the wall, and it all, really worked out. But that was the one time Freaks were able to really kind of put it all together and kind of get an advantage for themselves. But yeah, other than that, they weren't able to lock up all the CC all at once.
Yeah, and if I'm remembering correctly, that was also pretty late in that game as well in the bot lane. If it's the moment I'm thinking of, so at that point,
Hmm.
I think it was a little too far gone. Um, but yeah, just DRX controlling the games kind of throughout. As I said, a little bit of a slip up here and there with overextending. In game two, they got behind early, but through their dragon control and kind of just macro and everything around the map, they were able to kind of bring things even. get the Dragon Soul, of course, get the Elder, and then from there close out the game a little slightly more slowly than in game one, but definitely kind of maintaining their hold throughout.
Yeah, and once the Lulu Trundle train really got rolling, it was going to be tough for that early advantage that the Kwangdong Freaks did manage to get. That quickly just fell away as the Trundle became pretty unkillable there into the mid game. So yeah, GG's to DRX in their matchup against Kwangdong Freaks, going 2-0 in their series. I think really exciting stuff. I think it was a showcase of the Sivir and what Sivir is capable of, not only in a draft, what it can do in the games as well. Is a champion that they may not have been able to make such a comeback if they had another champion. I think giving the movement speed to the whole team gave them the ability, especially in game two, to kind of kite away from some of the engages and really just gave them the ankle breaking potential. So yeah, GG's to DRX.
Definitely, and we're leading into the final week of LCK as well.
Yep.
So right now that is also pretty tied up. Other than specific positions, we've got Genji in first at 16-1, T1 in second at 14-3. Live Sandbox 12-5. Then we have Damwon Gaming, Kia, KT Rolster, and DRX all tied at 9-7 in those 4 through 6 positions.
Nice.
So some good League of Legends to be had in this last week of LCK.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see where those shake out, and then so I believe with the playoff setup and everything, we'll have T1 and Genji having their bye weeks, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything else will kind of shake out to see what matchups we have in that first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really looking forward to it.
So lots of good LCK. We did have an LPL matchup. Um, as we said, we kind of picked some matchups that didn't end up being quite as close as we expected. We had the top esports versus V5 matchup. Um,
Well, let me pause you right there, because this of the game. Well, to be fair, the way we lined it up, we hoped for a bunch of like really even parity matches.
we did.
Even this one, we thought like, oh, this is definitely going to go 3 games. It's always these, I couldn't think of a boxing metaphor quickly enough. But like just two heavyweights going at it. And so this is V5 on like kind of a slump, not doing so hot in their recent matches, and Top Esports coming on a 13, I think it's a 13 game win streak. I don't think it was a 13 match win streak. But a 13 game win streak. So Top Esports coming into the match, definitely looking like a favorite. But V5 obviously always going to give a good matchup. But yeah, we see just some really heads up drafting from V5, and then playing out the games kind of beautifully.
Yeah, they I think picked well and really played around their comps well. One note for sure on my end was the Viego pick in game one for Top Esports. I was just not very impressed with. I think we've kind of seen him fall out of the meta for a reason. The Wukong was just so much stronger in the 1v1. We see Top going and trying to get that pressure early game and getting a kill on Rich in the top lane. But it was one kill that they were able to get. Outside of that, V5 really was able to utilize their comp around the map, around objectives. They're in these 5v5 team fights like the one that we saw at the Rift Herald, where you just have Rich hitting a ridiculous Ornn ultimate, Call of the Forged God nailing it through, I think, 4 members of top esports, and just immediately seeing their health bars start to melt while they're stunned there. Um, Fodic and PP God played phenomenally in the bot lane after top esports got that kill in the top side. They immediately go and get a double kill in the bot lane. Um, it was it was just a clinic in game one from V5.
Yeah, and it was even interesting. You based on the draft, you would have thought that Top Esports was going to have the advantage in the bottom lane. Like whenever the Kog'Maw W is up, they're going to have an impossible trading advantage over the short range of the Lucian and the Nami. So the lane was locked up for Jackie Love and Mark pretty much. And then the mid game decision making and movements from the Lucian Nami put them in a position where they were able to catch the bottom laners out. They were able to get some like really good culling damage down and just surprise the members of Top Esports. So I think big plays from Victory 5 in the bottom lane because, yeah, like you said, a 7-0 to Photic on the Lucian, just disgusting. So much fun to watch. I even have a note here, like spectator note. Enjoy the Lucian Nami, and Photic was playing it like really crisp, throwing out the under turret cullings was just hilarious, like knowing he had the Gale Force to pop back out with the dash, just really playing it really flashy, really clean, going 7-0 and 2, beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean they do definitely in the early game have that advantage, but that's the whole point of having the Lulu. Like you have the Lucian Nami, the damage you get from the Nami buff on Lucian with the double hits and everything is big, and you have the
Mm-hmm.
mobility early. But that's why you draft the Lulu with the Kog'Maw. It's protect the Kog'Maw. Your goal is to keep him alive, not overextend, only really move up or whatnot when you have that W up to be able to really hit from range. Um, and Photic and PP God played it phenomenally, like you said, getting the jump in a couple different occasions to get some kills and just snowball that lead. And V5 really didn't turn around after that lead in game one. They just kind of clinically closed everything out
Mm-hmm.
pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, and then we saw it continue into game two. Obviously, there was well, I shouldn't say obviously. There was some highlighting of the Oriana and Silas matchup from the casters, but rookie both sides of the caster Silas matchup he had the better of. In the first game, played the Oriana really well, played the lane very strong, and then now going into game two up against Knight, survived the laning phase in the early game and was able to, have some really good team fights for his team.
Yeah, and in game two, it you see top kind of adjust slightly and go for, instead of protect the Kog'Maw, they go for protect the Sivir. They have Tian on the Trundle and Wayward on the Gragas to give some good peel and everything to hopefully keep people off of Jackie Love. We see the Yumi coming out as well to try and give a little extra protection. But nonetheless, we really just don't see them have the ability to get that lane ahead and start to scale. We see Knight get the early kill in the mid lane on Rookie,
Hmm.
and then when the bot fight breaks out, they end up going 2-2,
Hmm.
which I think just benefits Photic and PP God in that sense, because you're just you're not you're in a scaling matchup on both sides, and I think that just favors the Senna really on that side early. Um, as well as with PP God on Seraphine. You're just putting money in the pockets. Yumi doesn't do as much with that money as the Seraphine does, and so
Right.
that 2v2 kill, or I guess both teams going down in the bot lane, I think kind of leans in V5's favor. And it was in game two a lot of like incremental kind of advantages that I felt
Yep.
like they were just consistently being able to pull out throughout the game. Um, it was it was impressive. They controlled vision very well to set up lots of different opportunities. I thought that game one they just kind of rolled over Top Esports. Game two they definitely had to work for it a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt like they really played a very clean game in game two as well.
Yeah, especially in the mid game, you saw they didn't they didn't play over eager. They didn't overstep. You saw them moving as like big 5-man little balls, making sure that they were all together, all ready for a fight, knowing that they were better as a group than alone, especially with the LeBlanc roaming around. Speaking of the LeBlanc, once it came to the, mid game fights, there were a couple of jump ins by night that just did not do a whole lot of damage. And it seemed like it was that information that V5 was like, oh, she doesn't kill us here. Like we can just fight now. There were a lot of like failed attempts at burst from the LeBlanc. The W's down. She's got to wait for her cooldowns, and V5 just pounces. So yeah, I think it was just well played by V5, but not overstepping.
Yeah, and it looked like there were going to be moments that they might. There was the double dragon fight
Yeah.
that we see a 5v5 fight. V5 comes out on top 5-3, getting 2 kills, but they're all so low that they just kind of hang around. And I was just waiting for Knight to get in there and pop a couple people. Unfortunately wasn't able to do that on Top Esports side. And then we just have the TP back in from Wayward. We get back into another 5v5 right around the dragon, and are just able to see V5 kind of extend that fight as well, have really solid positioning to ensure that they're keeping keeping their carries alive, and then just kind of winning out there and just kind of pushing from that point through kind of checking everything off the list, hitting the
Hmm.
Baron, and then just turrets and inhibs until they kind of wrapped it up.
Closed up their evening early. Didn't end up going to the game three, ending the win streak, ending their slump. So yeah, big victory for Victory Five over Top Esports in their series here.
Yeah, and like you had said, it was definitely the most competitive, I think, of the best of matchups, at least, that we had. And so, some good quality League of Legends there. Definitely enjoyed that a lot.
For
But
sure.
I don't think we have any other notes for League of Legends, other than I'll run through the LPL standings as well, since I just had been doing that. So, top 10 teams go to the playoffs in the LPL, out of the 17. So, JDG, Top Esports, RNG, V5, those are the top four. Then we have Edward Gaming, Weibo Gaming, OMG, LNG, and Anyone's Legend tied for 8th and ninth. And then Billy Gaming taking that last spot, but only half a game ahead of Fun Plus Phoenix. They have a win up in the win column, but they're tied in losses. And then a full game ahead of Thunder Talk Gaming, who's played 2 less games than them. So potential for some shakeups at the bottom of the standings there. But I believe that at least the top 6 are locked in right now.
Nice. Yeah, so we'll have some possibility for some shakeups here coming into the last matches.
Yeah. So we'll see how that shakes out. We've got lots of playoff League of Legends on the horizon that I am looking forward to.
Me too.
But Justin, you had some Magic games. How was it? What are you playing? Give me the deets.
Really long pauses to know when I'm supposed to go in there.
Yeah, I know. I that was not my best, but
That's okay. That's okay. We can work on it. We'll okay. Never mind. I'm not gonna go there. Have you ever seen 50 Shades of Grey?
yeah.
You know the part where she's like, "Well, how bad is it?" And he's like, "You don't even want to know." And then he like spanks her 6 times with the belt. That was gonna be the joke where it's like, "Wow, we'll worry about it in the red room later."
Ah,
'Cause,
yes.
dude, like it is my superpower to walk out of the room when the sexy stuff is on the TV that Sarah's watching, and it's just like I'm just coming out for water, and here's this guy just like, "Oh yeah," it's hilarious. Anyway, I said I wasn't gonna go there. I went there anyway.
That's
We're
fine. We'll
just,
work on it later.
we'll cut that out and we'll cut that out afterwards. But yeah, so we've had some Magic games recently. Nothing like this week,
Okay.
but I do want to talk about some of the most recent games because there's just some fun stuff going on there.
Cool.
So friend of the show, Buddha Spoon, was playing with myself and Braxit. We got some three-mander commander in, just playing with 3 players, and I tried out what used to be my Golos list before he was banned in Commander, changed the Commander to a different one, but it's basically the same strategy.
Are
So
you
Ian,
playing
go
like
ahead.
is this like CEDH when you're
No,
playing with
no,
them? Okay.
no.
I wasn't sure or like so because you're talking about bans. I know that with your pod, you guys do specific bans on their own. More so, at least for the Commander 9 League, you don't
Right.
really follow the typical ban list and everything. So,
Well, we do, and that's why I changed the commander.
okay, gotcha.
Because I would only be able to play it at that table to the groans of everybody there because Ian still is going to feel like, well, that's a banned commander. No wonder you won. Right?
Gotcha.
So we do still go by that ban list.
Okay,
The pick and ban that we do is like the full deck that we're banning away
okay. Well, I
just
was
for the matchup. Go ahead.
yeah, because I was thinking of I thought that there was a time period that there were some cards that were banned in CEDH that you guys were like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, and so I thought that you would just kind of continued to allow them to play through. It was I remember we were talking about the WotC people banning things that like you felt like were more just prevalent issues probably in their pod that they were banning across the board for CEDH.
Right.
And so I thought I recalled that you had like I think you had conversations with the Commander 9 guys about like, oh, do we like ban this, do we not, because like do we ban it because they say to, or not because it really doesn't have that kind of negative impact on our games and all. So I wasn't sure, I think, from that whether or not you follow the full like ban list for that.
Yeah, I think the result of those conversations is yeah, it just makes more sense to just build with that in mind. Because then you can bring your deck anywhere and play, and it's not this like weird like, oh, here's my house rule no ban list, janky thing. whatever. That's just a whole conversation. But
Gotcha.
no,
Okay.
you're right. We have had conversations in the Commander 9 group about bans from the, the makers of the format, and that's a different thing.
Okay.
Anyway, the commander changed for my 5 color lands deck, and Ian recently gifted me from the new set a copy of Gond Gate and a copy of Baldur's Gate, which are new gates so they're lands, but they have the subtype gate. So it works for certain cards that reference gates. And so I was very pleased and very grateful to Ian for gifting me those cards. He didn't like ask for any money. I didn't ask for them. It wasn't like an expected trade. And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about it." Just out of the blue, he was thinking of my decks, knew that I had a Gates deck, and was like, "Hey, I'm not going to use these. I'm just going to give it to Justin." Where previously I thought he hated me and wanted nothing to do with me. Here he was like gifting me, these like really nice good cards for one of my decks. So that was very cool. Against Buddha and Braxit, I whipped that deck out and saw the absolute power of both of those cards. I wasn't able to win that game, but seeing them both in play on the battlefield was kind of disgusting together. I made a lot of very explosive moves, had some really fun turns, and it was all due to those gates being just really good for the strategy. So that deck was really fun to play. So I wanted to mention that.
Nice. That's awesome. And that's very, like you said, very cool of Ian to be thinking like, oh, like I'm not going to use these here. Let me give them to Justin. It suits his deck better. So pretty cool. I don't think I ever thought that Ian hated you, but but I think that confirms he does not. So
Yeah. Yeah, no hate confirmed. So yeah, those were fun cards to see. In that group, me and Braxton were talking about how his Magda list is like modal, where he can take out a package of cards, put in another package, and it can power up or down the deck to fit certain, power levels. If we're trying to play at a more casual, like beer and pretzel level, to use Buddha's term, a more beer and pretzel level, he can take these cards out, put these ones in for just like a funner experience. And so me and Buddha then were tinkering around with the same idea. He's got a commander in mind. So yeah, just some fun stuff coming up that I'll be interested to talk about. But with the Commander 9, we got some games in as well. Ian brought a new commander. I believe it's Cathrall. I think it's Aspect Weaver or something similar. So the idea is when it enters the battlefield, you can distribute a counter of the keywords that are on creatures in your graveyard, and then put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on them for the amount of counters. So you end up growing like a bunch of like really just keyword soup massive creatures that are just like really tough to deal with once you get to the combat step. Got like graveyard interactions, all sorts of stuff, and obviously Ian builds a really good deck, so he romped us like in both games that he played the deck first time out, of course. So obviously he's the new big bat at the table, and everybody learns that we just need to build more graveyard hate into our commander decks to deal with that problem. So just wanted to comment on that game. GG's to Ian. His Cathrall deck is quite scary. He has a copy of Hermit Druid in there, which can just like fill your graveyard up from your library at like large swaths of cards at a time. So those were really fun games.
well, that's interesting too because I would imagine that a lot of the creature cards and whatnot that are going to have these individual aspects that he can use are also strong. So if he's able to get them onto the battlefield in general, without them going to the graveyard, they're going to have a significant impact on the game. So that's definitely a good strategy to be able to utilize that from having the creatures on the battlefield or from the graveyard.
Hmm.
Definitely a nice multifaceted deck. It sounds like.
Yeah, very cool. And this is his venture into, so Catherall is green, white, black. And much like every commander player, we all want to have a deck of every color combination. So I know that is Ian's Abzan deck. So that's the namesake for the green, black, white decks. So yeah, his take on it, very fun, and excited to see it moving forward. So yeah, those were just some notes on my most recent commander games that we had a lot of fun with. But yeah, I think it's time to get these people out of here. Let's hear your flavor of the week here, Aaron.
Sounds good. So for my food this week, as I had mentioned in the start of the episode, I went to Shady Maple in Lancaster. Phenomenal Amish food. We went for breakfast. That's typically what my family does. They have good food all day long, but I had some really solid Amish food. Omelets cooked right in front of your eyes with all sorts of yummy ingredients. I had a bacon mushroom Swiss omelet, which
Ooh.
was really good. And I just enjoy being there. It was cool. So that was my food for this week. My music this week. So there was an album released for Mac Miller that obviously a posthumous album called "I Love Life, Thank You." That has a number of different songs. I think it's about 12 different songs that I believe were from the vibe that I got were unreleased kind of pieces of his, similar to Kendrick's Untitled Unmastered, but whereas Kendrick's Untitled Unmastered were very much raw cuts of those songs and everything without
Hmm.
much or any editing potentially for those. These were songs that definitely seemed to fit in a number of different of Mac Miller's albums that maybe just didn't make the cut on the cutting room floor. And so it was really cool to listen through those, enjoy music of his that I've not heard before
Right.
since it's
Wow.
just been released, and then being able to kind of tell almost the era of when some of the songs were written or what album some of those songs were meant for and didn't make it to. I just have really enjoyed that. I've listened through a couple times now, and it's been a nice way to kind of listen to something new of his, and while of course not having anything new being written any longer.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that I would definitely recommend. I Love Life. Thank you. Um, and then for my visual medium this week, I did this to start the episode when I was joking with Justin, but guess who's back? Back again. Naruto's back. Tell a friend. So I've been watching Naruto again, and I have gotten back into it. It hit a really solid storyline. So I felt like there was a little bit of a lull that I kind of went through with it and everything. And so these past few episodes have really hooked me. And so right now, everything that's going on, I'm like, I had to switch it off to something else for background noise last night because I was just like, if I leave this on, I'm gonna be up until 4 in the morning, just like hooked on, just grinding through these episodes and enjoying that. So Naruto is my visual medium, and that is my flavor of the week.
Hooked on phonics. Hell yeah, man. My visual medium here for the week, much less exciting. We watched the episode 1 of Sandman. I think it was on Netflix.
Yeah, I saw that came out.
The adaptation of the 80s graphic novel, phenomenon written by Neil Gaiman, and it was an enjoyable experience with Sarah. I don't know if I'll go back to it.
Why not? Because I remember.
It was boring.
Really?
It was boring. And
But didn't you really enjoy Sandman, like the novels?
yeah, but they're graphic novels, and I think there are some elements of that medium that made it great, and some of those things did not come across in the show.
Gotcha.
And adding story elements to make it like fit the small screen, making it in those chunks. I just don't think that story is like built for it. It doesn't make sense. The pacing was kind of odd for the first episode. And I'm no stick to the source material type guy. I understand that the adaptations and edits have to be made, but overall, it just seemed like a boring take on a story that I like fell in love with for very specific reasons. And when some of those specific reasons are avoided, it's like, oh well, okay, this is just a different thing for a different audience.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
don't know the novel. I would say I'd probably give it another episode or two if I were you, just to see if they can maybe lock in on some of those things that you enjoyed from the graphic novel. But of course, don't if you don't want to. But
Sure.
I don't
Sure.
know. I always I would like to give things the extra little opportunity, just because you never know. Sometimes that first episode is just a little rough in terms of like starting stories and everything, and just doesn't flow quite as well. Maybe there's potential for it. So
No, and you may be right. I might have to get better at, being a little patient, understanding that the first 50 minutes of something may not be everything that it is and will be. So yeah, that may be some good advice.
take it or leave it. Either way,
Sure.
I'm sure there are many other good things out there that you can watch. So I don't think you would be at a big loss, but might be worth it to give it a shot.
And maybe I'll be back. I'll be back next week. Maybe that'll be my visual medium Sandman episode 2. My food, speaking of second, I had a second appetite last night. Sarah came home early from appointments. There was some kind of blah, blah, blah. And so she came home early. I had a big bowl of soup there because, I didn't expect her to be home. She comes home and she was like, oh, well, I think I'm going to make burgers. I've got hot soup in front of me. I'm like, yeah, but I've got. And she's
Count
like, yeah, I
me
gotta
in.
eat. Yeah, I was like, all right, count me in. So I said, just don't make that many fries for me because I'm more interested in the burger. So I had a big old second wind. I had the soup, I had the burger, I had the fries, and I even had a little bit of dessert. I'm turning into just a trash compactor, that's for sure. But it was all delicious, obviously all home cooked. Sarah's total queen. My music for the week, we were talking about Bo Burnham, some of his early work, some of his early funny songs, like Perfect Woman, 3.14 Apple Pie, New Math, some of the funny stuff. That's just an honorable mention. My real music for the week, if you haven't heard it, this may have been already my music for the week. I don't know, but I'll say it again. Albuquerque by Weird Al Yankovic. It's
I don't
one of the
think so.
funniest songs ever. It's like an 11-minute long story about a one-way ticket to Albuquerque, and how he hates sauerkraut. It is one of the funniest things. It's like a relic from my childhood. Me and Sarah were talking about that, and we, go back and listen to it, and it was really funny. So that is my flavor of the week. It is warm root beer flavored.
Very cool. I'm assuming that's from the music.
Yeah, that's from the song.
Okay. Did you watch a music video for it, or was it just like listening through?
Oh no, it was just a song, and especially from my childhood, like
Okay.
we only knew it on like burned CDs, and
Yeah.
we would have to make sure we were like, oh no, we can't put that many songs on because we're about to put an 11-minute tune on here, so we had to sacrifice a bunch of space for it. But
Brutal, but worth
yeah, the
it.
funniest things ever. Yep, that's
Awesome.
the flavor of the week though.
Very cool. Well, that does, of course, bring us to the end of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. Of course, you know where to find us: Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. We really appreciate all of you taking a listen with us and joining us week after week.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. New episodes every Thursday. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. We want to grow the audience big time. If you want to get involved in events, join the Discord and any socials down the description on the link tree. Like Aaron said, like I just said, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out.
Later.